in public speaking either, is spit at the microphone. Saul now attempts to kill David. He finds out that Jonathan loves David, that Michal loves David, but Saul then becomes amazingly jealous. And he throws a spear at him, tries to pin him against the wall, tries to do him in, and misses narrowly because God is with David. And because God is with David, and you can see those very words there, because God was with David, Saul is afraid, and Saul is jealous. He knew that God was with David, and that's why he reacts. The people of this world react when they know that we are on God's side. We can see this several times in this story. What begins as just anger and jealousy quickly blackens into murderous attempts on David's life as Saul descends into this pit that he is digging for himself. God is with David, therefore Saul is afraid. David will not even raise a hand in this entire story. He does very little. Everybody does it for him because God is showing that he is behind all of these scenes, that God is with David, and David doesn't have to do anything. People are all doing it for him. They're the ones that are praising him. They're the ones that are loving him. They're the ones who shower their gifts upon him. We come to Saul's daughters, Merab and Michal. First, he offers in marriage his oldest daughter. This is a trap. He wants to enslave, he wants to trick David into becoming one of his generals. And then he'll be able to say, oh, you're the general, you got to go fight the battle. His motive is revealed in 17. He wants to get rid of David. And he figures, all right, we'll make him a general. It was a fluke thing with the Philistine, with Goliath. But, in a battle where there are thousands of people with swords and arrows flying everywhere, he's probably going to get killed. Let's see if we can do him in. And let's see if we can let the Philistines kill him, and we'll be rid of him. But Saul changes his mind, as Saul often does. This is one of his personality defects, is he couldn't stay true to one course. And so he withdraws his offer of marriage of Merab to David, gives him to another man, which ends up horribly for Saul. Saul was guilty of genocide of the Gibeonites, and when David finds out, later on when David becomes king, and the Gibeonites, he finds out that there are bad things happening in the world because of Saul's genocide, and so the sons of Merab are put to death to pay for that genocide. And they suffer terribly. If Saul had followed through, that would never have happened. But Saul then learns of Michal's love for David. And it's another trap. And in their day, they had to have a bride price. A bride price was part of the economic realities of that time. Everybody was important in their community. And if one person transferred over to another family because of marriage, this was an economic blow to your community. So there was a bride price. And he figures, well, I'll just make an impossible bride price. This is a guy using a snowplow in Antarctica. I think this is an impossible task. David was given an impossible task. It feels like it's in Nebraska, right? We don't have near that much snow, but we've had a lot. It's an impossible job. Every week we got to go out and plow the snow. This guy, I don't know when he's going to end. David, I am sure Saul thought that he could just ask this horrendous thing and the Philistines would kill David. It would actually cost him his life. Now it says, there's an ambiguous phrase in there. It says that he was pleased to do this. Well, who's the he? Well, it could be Saul. Saul is pleased with this whole thing. He's pleased to do this because he thinks he can get rid of David. David is pleased because he thinks that he can become part of Saul's household. Maybe that would lessen Saul's anger towards him. Maybe that would solve all the problems if he was just part of the family. But everyone is pleased here. Everything that Saul does, though, works to David's advantage. And that's really the point that I think that the author of Samuel wants to make. Everything works to David's advantage. Whether Saul is trying to hurt him or whether he's trying to help him, it all comes out for good for David. That's one of the theological points that we need to apply to this. God chooses to work through anointed ones. That's what part of Samuel says. And he is going to not only work through Saul, but he's going to work through David, and eventually he's going to work through the great anointed one, Jesus Christ. But in the meantime, he's going to work through his anointed one. The problem is that we have two anointed ones. And Saul wants to get rid of the one anointed one. David wants to honor the other one and let God work it out. Now, we know the outcome. David wins. But in the meantime, this story is taking us on a ride. You know, there are plots to kill David. There are plots to rescue David. There are plots, all kinds of things going on. And that's something that we need to take into account as well. We know that God wins. We know that David becomes king. But in the meantime, he has to deal with all kinds of obstacles. And we have all kinds of obstacles in our life as God shows that he works through people, as God shows that he works through circumstances. We don't see God directly intervening in this story, but we see God taking care to fulfill his promises to his people. As he works through people, as he builds his kingdom, God takes care of us. We may not see him. We may not feel his hand. We may not feel his presence. We may just see the obstacles that are coming. But this story illustrates the truth in the New Testament that all things work together for good to them that love him. All things are not good. Saul trying to kill David is not a good thing. You know, Saul breaking promises to David is not a good thing. But all of these things are working together for good on David's behalf because the Lord was with David but had left Saul. Now, leaving Saul reminds us of a previous episode in this particular book where we read about the ark and the glory of God departing from Israel. And the same thing was happening now in Saul's life. The glory of God has departed from Saul. And in that case, there was a young man who was named Ichabod, which means the glory has gone. And now the glory is gone from Saul's life as well, and it frustrates him, it angers him, it destroys his life because of the choices that he has made. By contrast, the Lord is with David, and everything works out for good. God is at work in David, and he doesn't even do anything, really. He hardly talks in this thing at all. We don't know his thoughts. We know Saul's thoughts. We know Jonathan's thoughts. We know Michael's thoughts. We know the people's thoughts, but we don't know David's thoughts in all of this. David is just sort of, all of this is happening to him because God is showing that he is at work in David's life. And it's not really David at work doing this. And the more vigorously that